You hear it all the time, especially from politicians who say, well, if we spend more money this year, then our future taxes are going to have to go up, our children are going to have to pay for it. If not our children, maybe our grandchildren are going to have to pay for it, because when you issue debt, somebody's got to pay for it sooner or later. They just haven't thought it through, or maybe they're lying, one or the other, I'm not sure. Because it's never been the case. Alexander Hamilton, first Secretary of the Treasury, issued the first Treasury bonds over 220 years ago, and the United States has never paid off all of its Treasury bonds, not once ever. And it never has to be. In 1933, the government was issuing a lot of treasuries, and 30 years later, in 1963, the economy was doing fine. In 1965, the Treasury was issuing treasuries that were deficits, and in 1995, 30 years later, there was no increased taxes to pay off the deficit, and the economy was doing fine. And actually, here's another interesting thing. None of the budget proposals actually propose paying off the $9 trillion of Treasury securities that are held by the public. So if you look at the president's budget proposal, he's got a proposal where over the next 10 years, about 10 years from now or approximately that, the deficit gets smaller. If you look at Paul Ryan's budget from the Republican-controlled Budget Committee in the House, he's got a budget where the deficit 10 years from now gets down to essentially zero. Neither one of them even talks about paying off the $9 trillion worth of currently existing treasuries. Nobody in Washington does that. So how can a politician go out in the morning and say, boy, this is terrible, we have these deficits, we're going to have to raise taxes, our children are going to have this terrible burden, and then in the afternoon submit a budget that doesn't address that at all? The answer is, that is politics, it is not economics. And again, the book, if you're really interested in this stuff, sort of walks through the logic